We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships.
This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani, and as you know, today is Relationship Q&A. This is your opportunity to send a chat, to send a text. You can either reach out to me on the cell phone, 678-200-8996, or just drop it in the comments here. And as you know, we have our team, right? The Avengers with us here today. We got Jeff Witt and Lakeisha Hines. And if you don't know who they are, because you're tuning in for the first time, maybe you've been under a rock. Lakeisha Hines is one of our top marriage counselors who works with couples to help transform what's happening inside the home. She is phenomenal. She comes on every single week. And Jeff Witt, I'm going to tell you something. This man is a powerhouse. He is transforming the lives of men all over the world. And so if you are a husband or soon to be, and you want to figure this thing out, this is the man you want to get with. And so we are Couples Academy. This is Friday. We want you to let us know where you're logging in from. What city, what state, what country, what hemisphere, because that's what this is about. Listen, we're talking about your questions. So make sure you don't wait till 2 minutes before this show is over. Let's get it. Let's go. All right. So dump it in there right now, whether you're talking about communication or infidelity or trust or triggers, or maybe you're dating, right? And you're in the transition phase and you want to know what it takes to have a healthy relationship. Whatever your question is, act now. You ever go to a pool party? When you go to a pool party, everybody's standing around the pool waiting for the first person to jump in. And then once the first person dives in, then everybody gets in, because we are in a society of followers. We're waiting to feel comfortable. Be a leader. Stand up. Make something happen. Get it. Come here every single Friday to get what's yours. All right, guys, before we get started, as you know, we have a couple events we want to promote. Every day I'm going to be pumping this. The Bulletproof Marriage Getaway. I can't wait. Danielle and I are going to be flying in on Thursday in preparation, but make sure you register today. It's October 29th through Sunday, actually the 31st. It's going to be an amazing time. There'll be couples from all over the country, powerful speakers. It's going to be an opportunity to really connect and have a good time and learn how to take that relationship and do something different with it. It's only $350. So what are you waiting for? Register today. The link is in the description. Then get those tickets right away. It's on the other side of Illinois. It's in Wisconsin, I believe. Yeah, we're going to have an amazing time, so make sure you do that. Also, I want to share with you another testimonial from one of the individuals who was at the retreat. I'm telling you, the impact. I just got an incredible email yesterday from one of the attendees. I think on Monday, I'll share that along with his video. But check out what this brother had to say, and then we'll get started with the show.
Hi, my name is Gonzalez Smith. I'm from Pennsylvania. I came to Atlanta to the Couples Academy to help restore my marriage. I've been dealing with issues within my marriage. We needed help. I had an affair and created infidelity within the relationship, whether it was talking to different women, having a sexual affair. Moving forward, without getting proper help, proper tools, Couples Academy has helped us with the intensity of building the blocks, building the relationship back, how with the essential tools of getting what's inside out on a table where you are free to discuss and release and let go what you're dealing with. My takeaway is not only coming to a peaceful environment, but coming with other couples who have experienced issues, coming to learn that my wife had issues with an emotional affair that I didn't even know about that lasted for years, and doing her part. We come to grips of learning how to forgive each other It took me 2 years to find forgiveness coming from my wife that I expected. I encourage anybody to seek counseling for your marriage, for yourself. They have a system in place called the Enneagram. The Enneagram helps you identify the core of who you are and work on the steps and necessities to evaluate you as well as your spouse to understand how you operate. Ours were identical to the core. Something that she's like, do you get what I'm trying to tell you? Do you understand where I'm at? You understand where I'm coming from? But it was coming from a place of love. A lot of times people talk at each other rather than talk to each other. So this was a place in time where we were able to talk to each other. We was able to embrace each other. We was able to cry and just express ourselves. Male and female, we had couples where we were separated, where we went to an excursion that allowed us to absorb our spouse without the presence of our spouse. And it allowed you to reflect upon that part of your marriage. That was the highest part. That was the highest part, because when you came back to reality, you came back to your spouse with authentic love, a deserving love that was not even painful. And that I'll never forget. It was the first time in months, in years, that I was able to hold my wife, get a simple hug from my wife since I've been here. I encourage you to make that discovery call. Reach out, because when you reach out to them, Hassani and Danielle, you're not only reaching out to professionals, you're actually reaching out to family without judgment, without reservation. So it's not a plea, it's not an urge, but it's an encouragement for you to move forward and genuinely come back if you choose to. Because all things work together for the good of them that love him and are called according to his purpose. Thank you. God bless.
What a powerful testimonial. It's always good when we hear from men, because a lot of times as men, we don't really talk. We don't really articulate and share our thoughts and feelings about things. But that was powerful. Now, Jeff, you were with us that weekend. What are your thoughts about what he said?
It was actually just a beautiful experience with him. I believe I have an echo. It was actually beautiful just to experience it with them. I had a chance to sit down and talk with them and walk with them through their journey. And like you said, that excursion, when you experience it, that one little trip out really sets the boat on fire and like makes you realize what you're missing if you don't really put all of you into fixing things. And it was impactful to be around them, just to watch them hug. Like, I had a hard time holding my own tears back watching those two. So especially when you knew the issues, when you know what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, tuning into the show is great, because intellectually you are stimulated and you're given great information. But sometimes it's not until you begin to experience things. That's why we call it experiential learning. Those are the things that really sit with you. They stay with you. They're the most impactful. They lead to transformation and breakthrough. And this is why we're encouraging that you need to get here. Right? You could read books, you could watch videos, you can have great conversations, you could be a part of small groups, and all of those things are critically important, and you should do that. But there's something uniquely different when you go through a process and an experience, what we call evolutions, that really shift and change things in your life and in your marriage. So November the 12th through the 14th, it's happening again, so make sure you register. All right, we're going to jump into these questions. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just put a comment from Kathy. She said it was a great testimony. Beautiful couple. We met them in ATL in July with Hassani and Danielle. Enneagram is enlightening.
And it is. And guys, we encourage you, jump in, get in, do what you have to do to make things happen. All right, we're going to jump to some questions. Hold on. Let's
Sorry.
go through some questions. How do you deal with a spouse who is always on social media and flirting? It impacts how I feel about myself because every account is full of women and I start to compare myself. Let's jump into this, guys. What are your thoughts about that? Social media etiquette in a marriage. A spouse is constantly flirting with other women online. And of course, it shatters the self-esteem, self-worth, and value that a spouse has in the marriage. How do you address that?
First and foremost, I want to address the comparing themselves to what it is that they're seeing on social media. You never want to get into comparing yourself to other people. You are uniquely you. The Bible tells us that we are beautifully, wonderfully made. You are not to compare yourself to anyone else. God made you the way that you're supposed to be. And the sooner you accept that for yourself, it won't even matter what else you're seeing on social media. But the second thing is the spouse who's flirting, that's literally danger zone, because what you put out there, it's like fishing. You sit down to fish and you throw bait out, eventually a fish is gonna bite. And so it's definitely not a safe place to visit. The flirting definitely can lead to other things. So I definitely say this is not a good thing to do. You definitely need to communicate with your spouse that this is uncomfortable for you and ask them to stop.
You're gonna have to draw a hard boundary on that, and because it's the beginning, and it's possible that it never goes anywhere. But the fact that there's flirting involved is the first step, and that's right. The flirting especially takes it, because the looking through the profiles, that's pornography. The moment that they start flirting, that's engagement. That's the same thing as if he was talking to women on the street.
And I think that's a great point. And what we do is we say, well, it's online. It's safe. It's not like I'm physically with the person. This person could be 1,000 miles away. It's innocent. There's nothing to it. It's no big deal. All I'm doing is checking like on a picture or making a comment every now and then. And we're just inboxing or direct messaging. It's just back and forth banter. It's no big deal. But we know that oftentimes the more you engage online, it transitions into an offline experience. And we know that there's a high probability of inappropriate behaviors because of this level of access. We talked about this before. See, it's starting off with flirtation, right? So-called flirtation. But this is a violation to a healthy relationship. Statistically, when you look at the divorce statistics, I think there was a poll done in 2019 that suggested that Facebook was one of the top reasons or contributing factors that led to divorce, because people had easy access to former partners or people that they weren't know, but they were exploring. They were a part of dating sites and social media and engaging in inappropriate behaviors. And these type of things are violations. So the question is, what do you do? Well, number one, I would encourage you to have a conversation about it. We have a video entitled Social Media Etiquette for Couples, and it gives a 15-point plan of what you need to do in terms of how you show up on social media. That's number one. Number two, you need to establish clear boundaries of what is appropriate and inappropriate when dealing with members of the opposite sex, because oftentimes we have two different value systems and they contradict each other. And there needs to be a shared value system. There needs to be what we call relational code of ethics in terms of how you govern your life. But at the end of the day, you can't change what a person does. If a person is not ready and not willing, they're going to do whatever they want to do. But what you need to do is determine what you are willing to do, what you are willing to settle with. Now, I don't believe in victimizing the victim. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm telling you this, and you two can weigh in on this. We oftentimes teach people how to treat us by our reaction and response to what it is that they do. So some people have a high tolerance for pain and abuse. Some people will rationalize and justify and go along with bad behavior, and they may emotionally react and respond. But eventually, see, our spouse knows our patterns. They know, they'll be offended. They're going to scream, shout, huff and puff and spit and yell and curse and throw something. But in 2-3 days, they're going to be all right and back to normal. So I'm going to engage again because I know there are no consequences for my actions. And I think in terms of boundaries, it's about creating a system of accountability and having consequences in place if certain behaviors take place. Because everything has to be conditional. We hear this term, unconditional love. And that's right. God loves us unconditionally, but our relationship with him is based upon conditions. There was a condition to come into relationship with him. And if we don't honor certain conditions, we can fall out of relationship with him. And so likewise, the same thing has to happen in our marriage. What do you guys think about that?
Well, two things.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, but the thing about God loving us unconditionally, it's if we confess our sins, right? We have to have a contrite heart that we've actually done something wrong. And so when you have someone dodging these types of situations, I've seen the men dodge and dodge and dodge. And so women, I'm going to give you a little trick. One, shoe on the other foot, right? So it's okay for me to start talking to men, and they're going to absolutely say no. And the second thing is simply like just realizing that it isn't, they're going to use distance as an excuse. Oh, she's in Florida or she's in California, or she's in Hawaii, blah. We're just talking. It's just banter. I want you to know that the old school relationships were all done by letter. When I met my wife, we were separated by countries. And so distance can come real close, real quick, and things become more intense because they're not revealing their soul to you anymore. They're revealing their soul online. And they're sharing thoughts, and those thoughts can become intimate real quick. And when I say intimate, I'm not just talking about sexual thoughts. I'm talking about just what's going on with them. And the connection can be formed. And that connection is hard to stop once it gets going.
Mm.
So if you don't draw the line, you're just setting the timer on a time bomb and watching the clock tick away, like you're waiting for dinner to get done. It's going to happen.
So the two things, and I'm sorry, Jeff, I thought you were done. The two things that I had was definitely what you feed will grow. And if you continue to pour into, or not you, your spouse continues to pour into these different communications on Facebook, it will grow. And again, we don't know that it will turn into, I agree with you, Jeff, we don't know that it will turn into something physical. But at the end of the day, we know that there are different types of affairs. They're not all sexual. So it definitely can, and most likely will grow into something else if it is not cut off right now. And the second thing is, as coaches, we believe that we often know inside of us what we need to do, but we choose not to do it. So I believe you know what it is that you need to do, but maybe you're not doing it for multiple reasons. There are multiple reasons why people don't do things. One of the main reasons is fear. So are you afraid that if you go to your spouse and you tell them that you want them to do this thing, that they won't do it? Do you think that they'll say they'll stop and they won't? So do you have concerns that go beyond just this? What is the fear? And there is one thing that was mentioned in this comment also about comparing yourself to others. Well, is there a fear that you're not good enough, or that he's not attracted to you, or whatever? So what is stopping you from having the conversation that you need to have with your spouse?
I think this ties into this question too. My spouse keeps his phone locked, developed hidden friendships with women, taking a woman out to lunch behind my back. He denies wrongdoing. How do I get him to understand how big his betrayal is? And once again, see how it starts off online. It's no big deal. It's platonic. We're having innocent conversations. And then all of a sudden offline, we're having lunch and all these other things. How do I get him to realize that his betrayal is big? And once again, I think the answers are the same. Listen, at the end of the day, you need to, first of all, watch the show. I think a lot of times people are unclear on what a betrayal actually is. We've made it synonymous with solely sexual intercourse. And as we've just unpacked, there's many different types of betrayal. And I think learning through this show is one way to get you on the same page. See, when you're drinking from the same well, if you will, you're growing together. But at the end of the day, once again, it's another situation. My spouse is doing something I don't approve of. You can't change your spouse no matter how hard you try. It's just going to frustrate you because you're not getting the results you want. Then they feel imprisoned and they feel controlled, and they may react by doing more of the same that got them in the situation in the first place. So what are you going to do? I think oftentimes the focus is always on what the spouse needs to do to get things right, but never a focus on what do I need to do? how do I build, not just building up walls around me, what rules do I need to establish for myself? So here I am, I'm a wife in this marriage. I'm doing these things to serve you, my husband, but you're continuing to compromise the integrity of this marriage by connecting with what other women. So what am I going to stop doing? Right? How am I going to stop showing up to make you aware of what is unacceptable? I'm not going to continue to do what I've been doing, because in essence, what I'm saying is I'm going to continue to reward you for your bad behavior. See, these are the hard conversations that we need to have. And maybe you need to connect with somebody, possibly Lakeisha, if you're a man, possibly Jeff, to strategize different ways to create a plan in place to wake your spouse up to the reality of what's happening. Because I'm going to tell you something, a lot of men, I hear it all the time. I didn't realize that it was going to cause this much hurt. I didn't realize what I was doing was that bad. It was not until, we got to the end of our relationship and the threat of losing it. That's when I woke up to the reality of all the things that I have been doing all along. And sometimes they need a huge wake up call before it's too late, guys.
Yeah.
When we move in instinct, this is what happens. Men actually deviate when they're moving on instinct and they haven't. Life is reactional in instinct. And so it's all about curiosity. And so every time they become curious, I heard an interesting thing with a guy that I work with. He said the other day, he said, I was always looking at the neighbor's grass as being greener, but I never realized I wasn't watering my own lawn.
Mm.
And so that's what's happening right now with all this curiosity and this hiding and these dating. He's watering the lawn, trying to figure out what he's going to do. These are all little tiny mini affairs. If it's multiple women, then it's multiple affairs, because he's creating some kind of bond and connection that he should be spending with his wife in those times at lunch with his wife. You've got to draw a line. If you don't draw that line, just know it's coming. It's going to happen. Something is going to happen across the line. It doesn't mean that it's going to be sexual every time, but you're either going to build up and explode and have all kinds of emotional, and you're better off just confronting it now and getting it out in the open and setting some boundaries. I would consider getting help to do that.
Mm.
We will never have
just pure emotional. It'll be one directional attack, and until sometimes men will close up and just rebel even harder when that happens. Society's,
we will never have healthy marriages, happy marriages, if we are both not pouring into each other. Anytime one spouse begins to look outside of the marriage for communication, conversation, fellowship, camaraderie, whatever it is, it's not going to end well, and you're not going to have the most fulfilling marriage that you can possibly have if you're giving any piece of your energy to another human being. And I'm not talking about healthy friendships. I'm not talking about serving at your church. I'm not talking about those things. But clearly, this is seeking something from another female that really this person should be seeking from the person that they said I do to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Here's another question, guys. How do I deal with a spouse that cheated and was forgiven, but when the other partner does the same, it suddenly is that the person's fault that the marriage is broken? This is what we go back to when we talk about fundamental attribution error. So both of you are guilty of doing the same things, but when you did it, it's because you have no character, you're wayward, you're just a miserable prick that doesn't honor marriage. But when I do it, it's because, I was weak. I fell into a situation, right? So we justify our own wrong, but and it goes back to that binocular trick, right? That I talked about yesterday, how we can magnify and make something really huge, or minimize and make something really small, depending upon what we're dealing with. And so, listen, the fact is, when an affair occurs, it's because something's going wrong either inside of the relationship or inside of the person, or a combination of the two. So what he's saying is true, but his truth was true for you when you were the offender. I think it's true. And I think that we need to have real conversations to unpack it all. Now, I can't make you cheat. It is a decision that you make, but there could be vulnerabilities in the relationship that created a person to get to a certain place where they chose an option that wasn't favorable for that relationship. So this is why counseling is important, to get you both on the same page in terms of understanding the why of the affair. Because if we don't truly understand the why, guess what? It's probable that it can happen again and again and again. What do you guys think?
I think it's, like we always have those sidebar conversations about when you feel like there's a problem and you don't know how to fix it. When you arrive at that stage, that's the first warning lamp, and it builds and it builds and it builds. If you sit in that without seeking advice, without getting help, without confronting it with your spouse, without dealing with it in that early stage, what happens is it builds to a point where there becomes a little bit of either resentment or anger or fear or mistrust, or even the desire to look outside to solve that problem. And that just could be missing affection, or we saw that multiple times where one spouse shut off from affection, the other spouse went and found that affection somewhere else. And so that's lack of communication in a relationship. So one of the easiest ways to get that back is to say, hey, listen, I want to work on us before there's a major problem, to seek some kind of help, whether it's your pastor or a coach or a therapist, to try to intervene before it gets out of hand.
You've ever heard that saying, you can dish it out, but you can't take it in?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is one of those things where it's like, okay, this person cheated, they were forgiven, but then when it happened to them, they couldn't forgive. Again, we don't know the background information. We don't know if this was, whatever. We don't know all the details, but at the end of the day, cheating is wrong. It's not right. And at the end of the day, we have to take ownership for what it is that we've done. We do have to seek forgiveness, not only from God, but for ourselves and from our spouses. And forgive if you desire to be forgiven. We ask God to forgive us all the time for our indiscretions and things that we do. And so we have to be willing to forgive as well. So
absolutely.
I also think we need to just remember that you can't just stop cheating. There's tools that you need to create a good relationship. There's something unhealthy in that relationship, right? And putting a Band-Aid on it with forgiveness and saying, okay, we're going to try to work it out is not enough. You got to go deep, because something caused that landmine to happen, and there's still pain on the other side. Those things need to be uprooted, fixed, talked about, discussed. Rules need to be established so you can move forward with some kind of help. Just covering it up and saying, I forgave him, that didn't necessarily heal the relationship.
Jeff, that's a good point, and I think it lends to this comment by B. O'Neill. It says, I've sent my husband the link and I've forwarded several of your shows to him, but he won't even watch and don't want to talk about his affair. He says it's ended. There's nothing to talk about. And I think, to your point, it's not just simply it's over, let's move on, because you're not addressing critical issues and you're suppressing things. And guess what? It could wind up happening again because there's no system of accountability. There's no any of that. And so, listen, it's a hard pill to swallow when you want to move forward and you want to heal and you want to reconnect with your spouse, but they're not willing to do the work. And I know that some of us, I don't know, we're motivated by different things. And I've seen this happen before, right? So in this situation, a woman wants the marriage. The man's not interested. He wants the marriage, but not willing to work on the relationship. Then when she's just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. Then all of a sudden he wants to work on the marriage and she's done, right? And so we see couples, how their motivation just it vacillates back and forth and back and forth. And what we're realizing that they're not on the same page at the same time, which could literally compromise what's possible for their relationship. And these are the struggles. And so if you're that person in waiting, listen, when you've done all that you can do, pray, bring God into it. Because sometimes you could pray that God will raise somebody up to speak to your spouse in a way that you can't, because they're not receptive to you. You can pray for situations and circumstances to present themselves, to smack them in the face, metaphorically speaking, hopefully not physically, to get them to realize, wait a minute, I need to change something now, because if I don't, I'm going to lose my spouse. You know, the God factor is so critically important, relying on a community, and then being here in the meantime, in the the waiting period to stay motivated and encouraged and prayed up and to get strategies and tactics on what you need to do to turn things around. Listen, C says, you guys are amazing. You have been helping me and my wife bounce back after several years of infidelity. We're currently trying to get our finances together so we can attend a session. See, this is why we do it. This is why we do it, guys. A lot of times people say we can't afford the counseling. We can't go to an intensive. Well, guess what? Tune in every week. Get what you need. And when you're in a position and ready to do more, do it. I hope you guys can stay on with me just a couple more minutes. There's a few more comments I want to get to. Ladidra says, good morning from Dallas. How do you deal with a spouse that gives you the silent treatment often? The silent treatment can last a week, 2 weeks, and sometimes a month. This is so draining. That's a serious situation. What do you guys think about that?
Anytime you cut off communication with your spouse, it is debilitating. Like, we cannot move forward in any type of way if you're not talking. Why are you closed off to your spouse? And giving them the silent treatment creates all types of insecurities. It causes the spouse to go inside of their head and start thinking of things that they really don't need to be thinking about. It puts them in limbo. It's like you driving blindfolded. And we know that is not going to end well. So that's not okay. That's unacceptable. I don't know. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I think there's more to it, because what we have to ask is, my wife is the queen of silent treatment. Haven't experienced it in 3 years because we've been really working on things, but she's the queen of silent treatment. And I think I had to turn that mirror up and ask, why are they giving me the silent treatment? What pain am I causing? What possibility? Sometimes we're just coy with each other. And if I would say something to offend her, she would just shut down. And instead of dealing with it head on and just telling me her boundaries. And the truth of the matter is, I had to look at me. So the first thing I would do is figure out what you're doing to cause her to go silent or cause him to go silent. And then after you figure that out, stop that behavior. And then when you're in a place that's good, for those moments where they are talking to you, go back calmly without an agenda of inflicting pain. Go calmly, clearly, and try to have a conversation about, how do I not set off those landmines that make you shut down? How do we open this up?
Sometimes that's the case, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes this is who that person is, and this is who they were before they even entered into a relationship with you. So I would be curious to know if this was something that they always did, or if this is something that just began. Because if it's something that just began, then absolutely, Jeff, I'm with you right on point. But I do know that there are individuals that this is who they are, and this is how they deal with uncomfortable situations. And it's nothing that the other person said. It's something that they need to deal with internally. So it may be a situation where the husband needs to reach out to you, Jeff.
I think you're both right. I think both of you are absolutely right. And you're looking at it from two different vantage points, because obviously in a relationship, there's things that we do that trigger our spouse to respond in a particular way. Now, some women or men pop off. They become verbal assassins. Some men and women shut down, right? And they go into the silent treatment. And what happens is our spouse oftentimes could bring out the very worst in us. That implies that, to your point, Lakeisha, it was there. It was there before the relationship began. Now something happens in the relationship that pulls that back out. So I think it's both. I think when you are talking, you need to be able, in a loving way, have that conversation about, why did you go silent? What happened? What caused that? But at the same time, the silent treatment is a defense mechanism. Just like when I pop off and I call you out your name, it's a defense mechanism. And oftentimes we feel like we have to defend ourselves because we often feel like we're being attacked from our or by our partner. And this is where you get into this adversarial type of relational dynamic in a relationship. And that's what we do. We hold up our shield to protect and defend. And I'm going to go dark and I'm going to go silent because this is what works for me, though it ultimately does not work for the relationship. It's a temporary fix, but it doesn't resolve anything ultimately. And so this is why we have to have that conversation. What are my defense mechanisms? How am I showing up? And how can I begin to work on my own personal personal growth and development, find healing within myself, that ultimately will have an impact on our marriage. I need to get to this question, guys. This is from Tanetta. It says, what kind of boundaries can you set up for porn and sex addiction with prostitutes? So in this particular case, the spouse has been involved with prostitutes, watching porn. That's their addiction. What boundaries can be set up for the husband who has the issue, for the wife to protect herself from the husband, and what dynamics in the relationship need to be established in order to maintain its integrity?
Definitely. I know so many couples who have incorporated porn into their relationships, and I cannot tell you any one of them that ended well. Porn is a fantasy. It's not real. Anytime we're going inside of our heads, fantasizing about specific things, we're talking about porn, sexual acts, different things like that. Eventually, like I said, what you feed will grow. And the just watching is not going to be enough at some point, and it leads to other things. We're opening Pandora's box, and it's just not healthy. So as far as boundaries are concerned, if it is an addiction, that means that this individual needs to get some addictions counseling. They need to get some help to help them to deal with their porn addiction. And I'm not clear about the prostitute situation. I don't know if it's porn with prostitutes or if the spouse is having sex with prostitutes. I don't know, not sure. But anytime you bring in a third party, be it digitally or physically, it is going to end bad. It's never going to end in a healthy relationship.
I think anytime we're dealing with addiction, we have to realize that that's a form of sedation. There's a pain point there. Always, that is trying to be sedated or satiated. It's not just wild desire. If there's some part of their life that is unfulfilled that ends up manifesting itself in some form of lower level. Some people will make it food. And we always look at food as a less dangerous one, but it's actually pretty dangerous. It just kills us slowly. Yeah. Some people will do that with drugs and alcohol and sex. Other people will do it with violence. Okay. And these are all right in the lower half of Maslow. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the negative side of those things manifest themselves in food and sleep addictions, alcoholism, drug abuse, and then also in violence. And so if the thing that has to be realized is that you have to set strong boundaries, but you also need to get that person help, because there's something that's not being addressed, and you may not, as an individual, have the skills or the knowledge to be able to address those things head on yourself. But it would be good to start reading about it, though. So
yeah.
And if it's an addiction, you can set boundaries all day, but if they don't get help with that addiction, the boundaries, they will not honor those boundaries.
You got to have both the boundary and the help.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you guys are hitting it right on the head. You know, there's a video, I did about a year or so ago. You will continue to cheat unless you do these 6 things. I'm going to keep bringing that up because we talk about the importance of marital counseling, but that's not all. See, there's no silver bullet. There's no one specific thing. There's got to be a number of different things. You need a personal counselor. You need to go to Sex Anonymous, right? You need to join a support group. You need to be held accountable to a group of men. We say this all the time. Every man needs a man. Jeff knows all about this because he has men's groups that he leads in Africa, in London, in several in the United States. He knows the power of a support group and what that can do because it holds other men accountable and it exposes their mess. It's interesting. There's gender differences. Like when women, because we've led groups, we've had several men's groups and several women's groups. And I'm going to just be honest with you guys. Men and women respond differently. When women are in a group, and I'm going to just say it from my perspective, a lot of times they can get offended. I can't believe she said what she said about me. She called me out. Now I'm huffing and puffing and I'm mad because I feel like you put me on blast on Front Street. Men are different. Men can have hard conversations and call each other out and expose each other's mess because it's a part of developing the manhood. It's a part of helping them to become the best versions of themselves. And when you've been so used to lying to other people, it's really because you're lying to yourself. You've been wearing that mask for so long, you believe that that mask is actually who you are, and it's not. And sometimes you need people to rip that mask off and expose you, and then to tear you down, and then to help build you back up. And if you're not willing to put yourself in that type of environment where you become vulnerable, then guess what? It's not going to change. It's going to continue to stay with you. Jeff, I mean, speak to this, and then we're going to wrap this show up. And I don't mean to disparage women's groups, but the groups that we've led, we've seen how it's done a whole lot of good. But be careful how you say what you say, because if you come the wrong way and if you have the wrong tone, then boom, we have a problem on our hands.
No, Hassani, it's all in how we're raised, though. You have to think we're raising our little girls. We coddle them, we protect them, we nurture them, and our little boys, we tell them to be tough and don't cry and be strong and whatever. So men are used to being taught to that way and being treated that way, versus females, like they're always kind of treated gently and softly for the most part. So that's why
they're also told not to cry and not to be that too. So we have to understand is that society is not the people that should be raising our kids. And a lot of times our parents did their best, but we don't all have the same sense of morals and values that are actually effective and produce the results we want in our lives. And we can even see that they didn't produce the results in many of our parents' lives. So as we go from that, I think it's really about integrity. Integrity is just the honest conversation that you have with you about you. That is your root system. It's what plants you. And then if you're lying to other people, you're being inauthentic, that's because you lack integrity. If you have to hide anything from anyone at any time, it's because you lack integrity, unless it's like some kind of national security secret. So being a real authentic man or a real authentic woman is being able to be you at all times, unashamedly. So anything you have to hide, there's a problem. And so with these women, I have to tell you, like you've got to draw hard lines on what you accept. Because if you allow prostitution and all these kinds of things, they're going to continue. Like drug addiction, is any kind of addiction, it's going to continue until someone puts a line down, a hard line. And you should always offer the help, but there has to be the carrot and the stick in those situations. Because you can't allow that to affect your family in a way that's going to be adverse, and it can go, especially with prostitutes. There's diseases possibly being brought into the home. There's all kinds of weird things that could happen with pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a threat to the household, and you have to treat it like one.
This has been good, guys. I mean, listen, I know we're like almost 15 minutes over. Typically, we do a 30-minute show, but when you have two powerhouse individuals with so much wisdom and insight to offer, sometimes you can't bottle it up in 30 minutes. So I just want to thank you for joining us today. These are the co-hosts of the show. You can get used to seeing them on Fridays when we do relationship Q&A, as well as times where we bring them into the series because they have a little expertise that can contribute to the topic. Guys, I hope you have an amazing weekend. I hope you got something out of today's show. I know questions are still coming in, but we will take the time to address them on next week. Make it a great one. We have a private marriage intensive. We want you to send good energies, good vibes, and prayers for this particular couple. When we come together as a community, there's power, right? There's power that we can tap into that can impact other people's lives. So listen, guys, love you. Talk to you soon. Have a great week. See you on Monday. Take care.